I will not yield. Ethan Parker's words echoed through the great stone hall like a vow that made the very pillars of Highmere Castle tremble with anticipation. Amanda Rowland felt the air rush from her lungs as she watched the knight she secretly loved position himself between her and her father's mounting fury. The golden falcon crest hung above them like a dark omen, and she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes fixed upon her skin, burning like hot iron. Her heart hammered so loudly, she feared everyone in the hall could hear it. She had only had seconds to make the most important decision of her life, and now, clutching the document she had guarded in secret for over a decade in her trembling hands, she knew there was no turning back. Her grandfather's last will and testament was not merely ink on parchment, it was the key to destroying or saving everything she held dear. Lord Gregory Rowland was incandescent with rage, his clenched fists radiating a contained violence that made the air around him vibrate with menace. "Daughter," his voice sliced through the silence like a sharp blade, "you do not understand what you are doing." But Amanda understood perfectly. She saw Matthew Hargrove advancing with a predatory look, his eyes fixed on her as if she were property someone was trying to steal from him. She saw the nobles and merchants whispering among themselves, calculating how this upheaval would affect their own ambitions, and she saw Ethan, gloriously reckless in his loyalty, protecting her, even though he knew it could cost him his life. The chill of the stone seeped through the soles of her slippers, rising up her legs like icy fingers of foreboding. Her breath came in small, rapid clouds, and she could feel every muscle in her body taut as a rope about to snap. It was fear, it was terror, but it was also something more powerful, the burning certainty that the moment had come to choose between the safety of silence and the courage of truth. Hargrove took another step toward her, and that was when Ethan moved, not with violence, but with a resolve that transformed every inch of his body into an insurmountable barrier. "Not one more step," he murmured, and there was something in the deadly stillness of his voice that made even Gregory hesitate. Amanda closed her eyes for the briefest instant, feeling the entire world sway around her like a ship in a storm. When she opened them again, she knew the woman staring back through her own eyes was different from the one who had woken up that morning. Stronger, more dangerous, and absolutely willing to fight for justice, no matter how many enemies it created. "The testament is real," she said, and her voice cut through the hall like a church bell announcing war. "And it will be honored." In that moment, as she watched shock and fury explode on the faces around her, Amanda knew she had just lit the fuse of a battle that would determine not only her future, but the fate of everyone in Highmere. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what came next. The cold of the stone rose through the soles of Ethan Parker's boots as he strode through the corridors of Highmere Castle, each step echoing like a silent promise that yet another morning of tension awaited him. The golden falcon crest watched him from every tapestry, constantly reminding him of his place in that world's hierarchy, noble enough to bear a sword, insufficiently powerful to question orders. The summons had arrived before dawn. Lord Gregory Rowland desired his presence in the Great Hall, where wool merchants and visiting nobles would gather to witness the announcement of new alliances. Ethan knew this ritual. He knew Gregory would use any opportunity to reaffirm his superiority, especially before men whose respect depended more on gold than on blood. His fingers instinctively tightened around the H-hilt of his sword, not out of fear, but from a habit developed over years of serving with unyielding integrity, protecting those who could not protect themselves, speaking truths others preferred to silence. This stance had earned him admiration among the soldiers and increasing distrust from his lord. As he entered the hall, the heat of dozens of bodies and the scent of melting candle wax enveloped him like a suffocating embrace. Voices mingled in a constant murmur, punctuated by calculated laughter and the clinking of wine goblets. Gregory occupied his place of honor, dressed in gold-embroidered velvet, his face marked by the satisfaction of one who knows everyone there depended on his goodwill. Ethan positioned himself among the knights, but his eyes found Amanda Rowland almost involuntarily. She stood near her father, her hands clasped over a dress of grayish-blue silk, a color that enhanced the soft tone of her skin and the deep brown of her hair. There was something different about her today, a tension he recognized because he felt it mirrored in himself. For years they had exchanged discreet glances, brief conversations when protocol allowed, stolen moments when their souls seemed to recognize each other across the barriers imposed by society. He knew Amanda saw more in him than an obedient knight, just as he saw in her a woman of hidden strength. imprisoned by the expectations of a lord's daughter. Gregory raised his voice, and the hall fell silent. He began speaking of prosperity, of the growing trade routes that crossed the valley, of the importance of strategic alliances. His rhetoric was polished, but Ethan detected the arrogance beneath every word. The Lord was showing off, demonstrating power to impress visitors who might question him. Then, as Ethan had predicted, Gregory turned his eyes toward him. "Sir Ethan Parker," the Lord's voice cut the air like a blade. "Approach." Ethan's heart quickened, but his steps remained steady as he walked to the center of the hall. He felt the weight of dozens of stairs, the heat of the flames in the side fireplaces, the sound of his own controlled breathing. Amanda had stiffened in her chair, her hands now clenched tightly enough to mark her skin. "Tell us, Knight," Gregory continued, his voice laced with false courtesy, "about your recent decision to defend peasants who refuse to pay fair levies. Explain to these noble merchants why you believed it wise to question established authority." The silence in the hall grew thick. Ethan felt the trap closing around him, but he also felt something stronger than fear, the conviction that he was right. The peasants in question had lost their crops due to storms, and the demanded levies would lead them to starvation. He had only done what his moral code demanded. "My lord," Ethan replied, his voice clear and firm, "I defended families who were choosing between feeding their children or handing over their last grains as payment. I believed, and still believe, that protecting the vulnerable is a fundamental part of the oath I swore." Low laughter echoed from some corners of the hall. Gregory smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Admirable, Sir Parker, truly admirable. But perhaps your compassion has clouded your judgment. After all," he paused dramatically, "who determines what is just in Hymir, you or I?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Ethan knew any answer would be used against him, but he could not lie. He could not bend his spine before injustice, even when it wore velvet and bore noble titles. "I serve Hymir, my lord, and I believe that truly serving means protecting all its inhabitants, not just those who can pay for protection." The hall plunged into absolute silence. Gregory rose slowly, his face contorted by barely contained fury. Ethan could feel the danger radiating from the Lord like heat from a forge, but he stood erect, even when every instinct screamed at him to retreat. It was then that Amanda moved, an almost imperceptible shift, just a change in the position of her shoulders, but Ethan noticed it. When their eyes met for a brief instant, he saw something that surprised him: determination. Not fear, not submission, but a fierce resolve that mirrored his own. Gregory was about to speak again when the hall doors burst open. Matthew Hargrove entered, accompanied by his men, his chest puffed out with the arrogance of one who knew he was expected. A wealthy wool merchant who had bought his noble title through favors and gold, Hargrove had the look of a man accustomed to getting everything he desired. "Lord Gregory," Hargrove greeted with a minimal bow, his eyes already fixed on Amanda. "I hope I haven't missed the announcement I was so eagerly awaiting." The smile that returned to Gregory's face was genuine for the first time that morning. "You arrived at the perfect moment, Matthew. I was just about to share the excellent news." Ethan felt his stomach clench. Some primal instinct alerted him that what followed would change everything, and not for the better. Amanda had paled slightly, but she maintained her composure with a strength he admired and feared simultaneously. "My dear friends," Gregory announced, his voice echoing through the corners of the hall, "it is with great pleasure that I announce the betrothal of my daughter Amanda Rowland to the prosperous Matthew Hargrove. The union will be celebrated before the next winter." The words hit Ethan like physical blows. He saw the future he had secretly nurtured crumble in seconds, replaced by the image of Amanda in the hands of a man who saw her only as a trophy to be won. His fists involuntarily clenched, and he fought to maintain a neutral expression as polite applause echoed around him. Amanda did not applaud. She remained motionless, her face a mask of serenity that Ethan knew concealed an inner storm. When Hargrove approached her and took her hand to kiss it, Ethan saw the young woman's fingers contract slightly, as if fighting the impulse to pull away. "Lady Amanda," Hargrove murmured, loud enough for others to hear, "it will be an honor to make you my wife. I promise you will never lack anything that gold can buy." The choice of words was revealing. Hargrove spoke of possessions, not affection, of material comfort, not happiness. And in the silence that followed, Ethan realized Amanda perfectly understood the nature of the proposal. It was then that she stood up. The movement was sudden and unexpected, causing side conversations to cease instantly. All eyes turned to her, including her father's, who frowned with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Father," Amanda said, her voice clear and firm, echoing through the hall, "I need to speak with you. It is about something that may affect these negotiations." Gregory blinked, clearly disconcerted by the interruption. "Amanda, this is not the time for—" "It is about my grandfather's testament," she interrupted him, and her words fell upon the hall like stones thrown into a calm lake, creating shockwaves that spread to every corner. The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan saw Gregory pale, saw Hargrove frown with confusion, saw nobles and merchants exchange uneasy glances. And in the center of it all, Amanda remained standing, trembling slightly, but resolute as a tree that chooses to face the storm instead of bowing to it. The air in the hall became thick as honey, every breath a conscious effort, as Amanda's words still echoed among the ancient stones. Ethan watched Gregory's face undergo a slow, terrifying transformation, from initial surprise to comprehension, and then to the contained fury that made his hands shake on the arms of his chair. "Testament?" Hargrove's voice cut the silence, rough with irritation. "What testament? Lord Gregory, what is your daughter implying?" Amanda remained erect, but Ethan could see the cost of that courage in the tension of her shoulders, in the pallor that contrasted with the determination in her eyes. She had crossed a line from which there would be no return, and both of them knew it. "More than a decade ago," Amanda continued, ignoring her father's murderous gaze, "my grandfather, Lord Raymond Rowland, left specific provisions regarding the governance of Hymir, provisions that were never fulfilled." Gregory rose abruptly, his chair scraping against the stone with a sound that made several attendees flinch. "Amanda, you do not know what you are doing. Withdraw immediately." But Amanda did not move. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, a gesture Ethan recognized as pure stubbornness, masked as noble dignity. "The document is in my possession, Father, and I believe those present have the right to know its contents, especially considering the alliances being formed." The murmur that spread through the hall was like the buzzing of angry bees. Nobles whispered among themselves, merchants frowned, and Ethan saw more than one face light up with the morbid curiosity of one witnessing a scandal unfolding. Hargrove took a step forward, his fists clenched. "This is outrageous. Lord Gregory, you will not allow your daughter to sabotage our alliance with fantasies about ancient documents." "They are not fantasies," Amanda retorted, and for the first time her voice trembled slightly. "Raymond Rowland's testament establishes an ancient alliance with the Macadam branch of the family, creating a division of authority should the main line demonstrate abuse of power over the people of Hymir." The words hit the hall like an explosion. Ethan felt his heart race, not only because of Amanda's extraordinary courage, but because of the sudden understanding that she had kept this secret for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. And she had chosen to use it now when he was being humiliated, when she herself was being forced into a marriage she despised. Gregory descended the steps leading to his throne with measured steps, every movement radiating a silent threat. "You have no idea what you are doing, daughter. You have no notion of the consequences." "I have more notion than you imagine, Father." Amanda's voice gained strength, fueled by something Ethan recognized as years of frustration finally finding release. "I know the people murmur about injustices. I know honorable knights are publicly humiliated for defending the vulnerable, and I know alliances are being forged with men who see people as commodities." The last comment was directed straight at Hargrove, who paled with anger. "How dare you? I am a respectable man of business, not a slave trader." "Are you not?" Amanda turned to him, and Ethan saw a force she did not know she possessed. "Then why do you see me as an acquisition? Why do you speak of possessing me as one speaks of acquiring land or livestock?" The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling of the fireplaces. Ethan was fascinated and terrified simultaneously. Amanda was fighting for him, for herself, for something greater than both of them, but by doing so she was placing herself in mortal danger. Gregory was not a man to accept public challenges, especially from his own daughter. "That is enough," Gregory growled, approaching Amanda. "You will withdraw, you will hand over whatever document you think you possess, and you will apologize to Lord Hargrove for your improper conduct." "No." The word left Amanda's lips as a whisper, but it echoed through the hall like a shout. Ethan saw Gregory stop mid-step as if he had been struck. No one, absolutely no one, publicly contradicted Lord Gregory Rowland. It was then that Hargrove made his mistake. Perhaps encouraged by Gregory's silence, Perhaps simply losing patience, he approached Amanda and grabbed her arm. "Enough of this foolishness," he said, squeezing hard enough for her to wince. "You are my promised bride, and you will learn to obey me." Ethan moved before he could think. 3 quick steps brought him to Hargrove, and his hand closed over the merchant's wrist with enough force to make him release Amanda immediately. "Take your hands off her," Ethan said, his voice low but carrying a threat that made Hargrove instinctively recoil. The hall exploded. Voices rose from all sides, some in shock, others in indignation. Gregory roared something incomprehensible. Nobles rose from their chairs and guards stepped forward, hands on their swords. "How dare you touch me, common knight?" Hargrove yelled, rubbing his wrist. "This is treason, assault against a noble." Ethan did not reply. His eyes were fixed on Amanda, checking if she was all right, and when she nodded slightly, he finally turned to face the consequences of his act. "Sir Ethan Parker," Gregory's voice vibrated with contained rage, "you have just sealed your fate. Attacking a noble guest, interfering in family matters that do not concern you. Guards." "Wait!" Amanda's voice cut through the chaos like a sharp blade. Everyone stopped, turned, and saw that she had positioned herself between Ethan and the approaching guards. "Sir Ethan acted to protect my honor when my own fiancé disrespected it. If that is a crime, then all chivalry is criminal." "Amanda," Gregory growled, "step aside. Now. Not while I am protecting a man who acted with more honor in these last few minutes than many have shown in years." Ethan felt something break inside his chest. Amanda's courage, her willingness to place herself between him and danger, the way she defended not only him but the principles they both valued, was simultaneously the most beautiful and most terrifying thing he had ever witnessed. Hargrove pointed a trembling finger at both of them. This is exactly what I suspected. There is something between the two of you, something improper. No lady of honor would defend a common knight with such vehemence unless—" "Unless what?" Amanda interrupted, turning to him with genuine fury. "Unless I recognized honor when I see it, unless I valued integrity more than gold, unless I preferred the company of a good man to one who sees me as property." Amanda's words echoed through the hall like confessions, and Ethan saw the moment she realized she had said too much, but instead of retreating, she lifted her chin higher, daring anyone to question her words. Gregory approached slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was dangerously low. "You have not only disobeyed, daughter. You have publicly humiliated yourself, humiliated our family, and destroyed an important alliance. And why? For a knight who will be banished or hanged before sunset?" "No," Amanda replied, and her voice no longer trembled. "For principles you seem to have forgotten, for the honor this knight demonstrates every day, and for a testament you are afraid to see fulfilled because you know my grandfather predicted exactly this type of situation." The hall remained in absolute silence. Ethan could hear his own breathing, the crackling of the fireplaces, the wind howling through the ancient stones of the castle. And in the center of it all, Amanda stood like a warrior queen, protecting him with nothing but words and courage. Gregory looked around the hall, saw the attentive faces of nobles and merchants, and quickly calculated the political damage of a public execution without proper trial. When he finally spoke, every word came out poisoned with contained hatred. "Very well, daughter. You want this document examined, so be it. I will summon the council, the friars will verify its authenticity, and we shall see what your foolishness has brought upon us all. But until this is resolved," his eyes turned to Ethan like daggers, "Sir Ethan Parker will remain in custody, accused of assault against a noble and improper behavior with a high-born lady." Ethan bowed his head in acceptance. He knew he had sealed his fate the moment he touched Hargrove, but he did not regret it. To see Amanda humiliated, forced to accept the hands of a man who despised her, would have been worse than any punishment. As the guards approached, Amanda stepped forward once more. "If Sir Ethan is being accused of improper behavior with me, then I should be under the same accusation. After all, I was the one who initiated this conversation, I who defended him, I who—" "No," Ethan said softly, speaking for the first time since he had grabbed Hargrove. "Lady Amanda acted only as a noble lady should, defending justice. I take full responsibility for my actions." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Ethan saw in her eyes something that made all the consequences seem insignificant: gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that neither dared to name. The guards led him away while Amanda watched him, and the last thing Ethan saw before leaving the hall was her still standing, alone in the center of the chaos they had created together, braver and more beautiful than any heroine in his favorite stories. Ethan's cell was small and damp, carved into the very rock upon which the castle stood, but the cold that penetrated his bones came less from the wet stones than from the certainty that he had ruined not only his own life, but possibly Amanda's as well. The sound of dripping water echoed irregularly, marking the hours that dragged on since his imprisonment, each drop a reminder that outside, away from his protection, she faced the consequences of her courage alone. Above, he could hear the distant sounds of preparations. Hasty footsteps, raised voices, doors slamming shut. Gregory had summoned the council as promised, and Ethan imagined the tension that must hang over the castle as friars and nobles prepared to examine a document that could alter the balance of power in Hymir. When the iron door opened with a harsh screech, Ethan expected to see a guard bringing water or stale bread. Instead, the thin silhouette of Friar Edmund appeared in the doorway, carrying a candle that cast dancing shadows on the damp walls. "Sir Ethan," the friar said softly, closing the door behind him, "I hope you forgive the intrusion." Ethan rose from the stone bench, surprised. Friar Edmund was Lord Gregory's spiritual advisor, a man known for his erudition and, more importantly, his integrity. His presence here meant things upstairs were more complicated than Ethan had imagined. "Friar Edmund, it is an honor, although the circumstances are unusual," the friar smiled sadly. "Unusual circumstances require unusual measures. I come here not as Lord Gregory's emissary, but as a servant of the truth. And the truth, Sir Ethan, is that your situation is more dangerous than you realize." Ethan motioned for the friar to sit on the bench beside him, but the man remained standing, as if carrying the candle was more than enough to keep him occupied. "Dangerous in what way, Father? Hargrove is not just an ambitious merchant. He has connections throughout the region, influence that extends far beyond the wool trade. He is pressuring Lord Gregory for you to be tried for treason, not just assault." Friar Edmund paused, watching Ethan's face to gauge the impact of his words. "Treason, as you know, is punishable by death." Ethan's stomach clenched, but not out of fear for himself. "And Lady Amanda?" "Ah," the friar sighed. "Lady Amanda is another matter entirely. The document she possesses is real, Sir Ethan. I examined it personally. Lord Raymond's seal is authentic. The handwriting matches the records we have of his other writings. And the content is explosive." Ethan leaned forward, his heart racing. "Explosive how?" "Lord Raymond foresaw exactly this situation. Not the specific details, but the possibility that his son might become a tyrant. The testament establishes that in case of systematic abuse of power, authority over Hymir must be divided with the descendants of the MacAdams, a family that settled in the region through marriages 3 generations ago. Do the MacAdams still exist?" Friar Edmund nodded gravely. "A branch of the family lives in the adjacent valley. They are modest people, but of good reputation. What matters is that the document is legally valid, and Lord Gregory knows it. He also knows that if it is implemented, he will lose half of his authority." Ethan processed this information quickly. Then why didn't he simply destroy the testament when he found it? Because Lady Amanda was clever. She not only kept the original document, but made copies. One is with the MacAdams, another was sent to the Westmarch Abbey. Destroying the original would be pointless now. A new admiration for Amanda grew in Ethan's chest. She had not only kept a secret for years, she had meticulously prepared for the day she would need to use it. The woman he thought he knew was even more remarkable than he had imagined. "So, Lady Amanda is safe." The friar hesitated, and that hesitation told Ethan everything he needed to know. For now, but Gregory is furious, Hargrove is humiliated, and there are forces at play that none of us fully understand. Hargrove mentioned something about ensuring the marriage proceeds as planned, regardless of any legal complications. What does that mean? I do not know, but I fear it means he intends to take Amanda with him, willingly or not, before the council can reach a final decision on the testament. Ethan rose abruptly, his hands clenching into fists. The idea of Amanda being forced to leave with Hargrove, of being dragged away before she could see the fruits of her courage, made his blood boil. "I have to get out of here. I have to protect her." "And how do you intend to do that? You are imprisoned, accused of serious crimes, and even if you managed to escape, you would be a fugitive. That would only prove Hargrove's allegations about your unworthiness." Ethan walked to the small grated window, looking down at the courtyard where torches illuminated guards making their nightly rounds. "Then what is the alternative? Stay here while she suffers the consequences of defending me?" Friar Edmund approached, lowering his voice. The alternative is to trust that Lady Amanda is as strong as she proved to be today, to trust that the McAdams will answer the call when the council officially convenes, and to trust that the truth sometimes is more powerful than force. It's not enough, Ethan murmured. I cannot simply wait and hope everything works out. You are not just waiting, the friar replied. Your imprisonment, however unjust, is forcing Gregory to follow proper legal procedures. If he simply executed you without trial, he would lose credibility with the council. Your situation is buying time for the document to be properly examined. Ethan turned to face him. Are you saying my imprisonment is helping Amanda? I am saying that sometimes individual sacrifice serves a greater cause. You chose to protect Lady Amanda knowing it would bring consequences. Now you must have faith that your choice will have the impact you hoped for. A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the distant sound of bells tolling the hours. Ethan fought against every instinct that screamed at him to try to escape, to run to Amanda and take her away from that place. But Friar Edmund's logic was irrefutable. Fleeing would only confirm the accusations against him and destroy any chance Amanda had of seeing her plan succeed. How is she? Ethan finally asked, unable to contain the worry in his voice. The friar's face softened. Courageous, fearful, but brave. She sent something for you. Friar Edmund rummaged inside his robes and pulled out a small piece of embroidered fabric. It was a handkerchief, delicately worked with golden threads, forming the design of a falcon in flight. But it was what was folded inside it that made Ethan's heart race. A small iron key. What is this? The key to the family archives. Lady Amanda wants you to know that she trusts you to protect not only her, but everything they fought for today. The friar paused. And there is more. She managed to send a message to the McAdams. They will arrive before the council officially convenes. Ethan closed his fingers over the key, feeling the cold metal against his skin. It was not just an object. It was a symbol of absolute trust. Amanda was entrusting him not only with her life, but with the future of Highmere. Does Gregory know about the McAdams? He suspects, but is not yet certain. He is focused on controlling the immediate situation, on finding a way to discredit the document, or force Amanda to drop her claims. Friar Edmund held the candle closer to his body, as if to protect it from the wind coming through the window. But there is something else you must know. What? Lady Amanda is not just fighting for her grandfather's testament. She is fighting for you. She has categorically refused to proceed with the wedding preparations while you are imprisoned. She told her father that if you are executed for treason, she will claim her right to speak in your defense before the council. Ethan's chest tightened. She cannot do that. If she testifies in my defense, it will only confirm Hargrove's suspicions about our relationship. I told her the same thing. Friar Edmund smiled sadly. Her response was that she preferred to be honest about her feelings and face the consequences than to lie to protect a reputation others were already trying to destroy. Ethan slumped back onto the bench, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Amanda was risking for him. She was not just defying her father or Hargrove, she was defying the entire social structure that defined her world, and doing so, knowing that the price of failure would be too high for both of them. Friar Edmund, he said finally, if something happens to me, promise you will protect Lady Amanda. Promise you will not let them force her into a marriage that will destroy her. The friar studied him for a long moment. And what if I told you Lady Amanda made me promise the exact same thing about you? Ethan couldn't suppress a sad smile. Of course Amanda would think of him first. That was exactly the kind of person she was. Brave to the point of recklessness, loyal beyond reason, willing to sacrifice everything for those she loved. Then promise that no matter what happens, one of us will survive to make the world a better place. That is what truly matters. Friar Edmund nodded solemnly. I promise. And now I must leave before my absence is noted. But remember, Sir Ethan, sometimes apparent defeat is only the prelude to true victory. Have faith. After the friar left, Ethan remained in the darkness, holding Amanda's handkerchief and the small key. Outside he could hear the wind increasing in intensity, as if a storm were approaching. It was fitting, he thought. Storms were sometimes necessary to clear the air. He closed his eyes and tried to send a silent message through the castle stones, through the corridors he knew so well, to the room where Amanda was probably awake, planning her next move. Hold on a little longer, he murmured. Do not yield now. We are stronger together than either of us is alone. And somewhere above him, as if she had heard his thoughts, Amanda Rowland prepared for the most important battle of her life, knowing that the man she loved was counting on her to win a war neither of them could fight alone. Dawn arrived grey and menacing over Highmere, and Amanda watched from her chamber window as heavy clouds gathered on the horizon like a premonition of the events to come. She had slept little, spending most of the night reviewing every detail of her plan, every possible consequence, every way things could go wrong. Her fingers traced the window pane as she thought of Ethan, imprisoned in the dungeons below, probably blaming himself for reacting to protect her. If only he knew that his intervention had been exactly the catalyst she needed to finally act, to finally use the knowledge she had carried as a burden for so many years. The door opened behind her, and Amanda did not need to turn around to know who had entered. Her father's heavy, deliberate footsteps were unmistakable, as was the aura of contained fury he had carried with him since the day before. "Amanda!" Gregory's voice was low, controlled, more dangerous than if he had been shouting. "We need to talk." She turned slowly, maintaining her composure, even when she saw the grim expression on his face. "Good morning, Father. I hope you slept well considering the circumstances. Do not play games with me, daughter, not today." He closed the door behind him and approached, each step measured and threatening. "You destroyed an important alliance, humiliated our family before nobles and merchants, and now you are protecting a man accused of treason. I need to know, does this end here, or should I fear that my own daughter has become an enemy of the House of Rowland?" Amanda raised her chin, refusing to be intimidated. "I have become an enemy of injustice, Father. If that makes me an enemy of our house, then perhaps our house needs to rethink its values." The slap came fast and hard, making her head snap to the side and leaving the taste of blood in her mouth. But Amanda did not cry, did not retreat. Instead, she wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand and looked her father directly in the eyes. "Do you feel better now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the throbbing pain in her face. Gregory looked shocked by his own action, but quickly masked the surprise with more anger. "You forced me to it. Your insolence, your disobedience. That is not how a daughter should behave. And that is not how a father should behave," she retorted. "That is not how a lord should treat his people, and it is certainly not how Raymond Rowland's grandson should honor his memory. Do not dare invoke my father's name. You know nothing about the responsibilities he carried, about the difficult choices he had to make. I know he cared enough about Hymere's future to create safeguards against exactly the kind of behavior you demonstrated yesterday." Amanda moved to her desk, where a small but elaborate strongbox rested. With deliberate movements, she opened it and took out a carefully preserved parchment. "I know he predicted that one day someone would need to remind the Rowlands that power comes with responsibility." Gregory looked at the document as if it were a venomous snake. "Where did you get that?" "It was among my mother's things. Apparently she knew the testament's importance and kept it for me, along with specific instructions on when and how to use it." Amanda held the parchment carefully but firmly. "She told me before she died that a day would come when I would need to choose between blind obedience and doing what is right. That day has arrived." Your mother was delirious. The fever made her imagine conspiracies where none existed. My mother was preparing her daughter to protect Hymere when its own lord could not or would not do so. Amanda approached Gregory, fearless, and she was right. Yesterday I saw you publicly humiliate a good man simply to impress greedy merchants. I saw you arrange my marriage to a man who sees me as property, and when I tried to react, you prepared to execute the only knight in Hymere who still cares more about justice than political convenience. Gregory pointed at the parchment. "And you think that ancient piece of paper is going to change anything? You think you can challenge centuries of tradition and hierarchy based on the ravings of a dead man? I think I can honor the wisdom of a man who understood that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I know I can do it with the support of the McAdams, who arrived during the night and are waiting to present themselves to the council." Gregory's face paled. "The McAdams are here." "They are. And they brought with them genealogical records that prove their lineage, as well as copies of the testament that have been preserved in their families for generations." Amanda smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "You see, Father, I did not act impulsively yesterday. I have been preparing for this moment for years." Gregory slumped into a chair, as if the weight of the revelation had physically knocked him down. "You do not know what you have done. You do not know the forces you have set in motion. I know exactly what I have done. I have initiated a process that will restore balance in Hymere, that will protect innocent people from future tyranny, and that may save the life of a good man." Amanda carefully put the parchment back in the strongbox. "And I know I will do it with or without your approval. Hargrove will not accept this. He has too much invested in this marriage, too many connections that depend on this alliance." He what?" Amanda interrupted. "Is he going to force me to marry against my will? Is he going to kidnap me? Is he going to try to buy the council?" She laughed, a humorless sound. "Let him try. Every desperate action he takes will only prove what kind of man he truly is." Urgent knocking on the door interrupted the conversation. Gregory yelled permission to enter, and a guard appeared, clearly agitated. "My lord," he said breathless, "Matthew Hargrove is demanding an immediate audience. He says he has urgent information about the situation with the prisoner." Amanda and Gregory exchanged tense glances. "What kind of information?" Gregory asked. "He did not say, my lord, but he is very agitated, and he brought armed men with him." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. Armed men meant Hargrove had decided that diplomacy would not be enough. It meant he was prepared to use force to get what he wanted. "Tell Lord Hargrove I will receive him in the Great Hall in 1 hour," Gregory ordered, "and summon the council. It is time to resolve this situation once and for all." After the guard left, Gregory turned to Amanda. "Last chance, daughter. Retract your accusations, hand over the testament, marry Hargrove as planned, and perhaps I can negotiate the knight's life." Amanda stared at him for a long moment, seeing in his face not only anger, but also a kind of despair. He was afraid, she realized. Afraid of losing power, afraid of the changes she had set in motion, afraid that the world he knew was about to crumble. "No," she said finally, "I will not yield, not when we have come so close to the truth." Gregory nodded sadly. "Then may God have mercy on us all, because I fear what happens next will destroy much more than you imagine." After he left, Amanda approached the window once more, watching the growing movement in the courtyard below. Soldiers positioned themselves, knights checked their weapons, servants rushed back and forth with urgent messages. The storm she had predicted was finally arriving. But as she watched, she also saw other figures, men and women dressed in simple but dignified clothes, clearly not belonging to the castle. The McAdams had arrived, and their presence changed everything. She was no longer alone in this fight. Ethan was counting on her to be strong. The people of Hymir were counting on her to be wise, and she would not fail any of them. No matter what Hargrove brought, no matter what threats he made, she was ready. The war for the soul of Hymir was about to begin. The great hall of Hymir had never seemed so tense as it did that morning. The ancient stones seemed to absorb the anxiety, radiating from everyone present, creating a dense atmosphere that made every breath a conscious effort. Amanda entered, accompanied by 2 ladies-in-waiting, but her attention was focused on the faces around her, council members who avoided her gaze, lesser nobles who whispered among themselves, and in the center of it all, Matthew Hargrove. He had changed since the day before. Where before there had been calculated arrogance, Amanda now saw something more dangerous, desperate determination. Hargrove was surrounded by 6 armed men, clearly his own soldiers, not Hymir guards. It was a violation of protocol to bring weapons into the hall without permission, but no one dared to question him directly. Gregory took his place on the throne, but Amanda noticed that his posture did not radiate the usual confidence. His eyes constantly moved between her, Hargrove, and a group of people she recognized with a mixture of relief and nervousness. The McAdam family. There were 4 of them. A middle-aged man with grey hair who was clearly the patriarch, a strong-looking woman who must be his wife, and 2 young people who appeared to be their children. They dressed simply, but there was dignity in their posture, a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the tension dominating the rest of the hall. Friar Edmund was also present, carrying a leather pouch that Amanda knew contained historical documents and materials necessary to verify the testament's authenticity. When their eyes met, he nodded almost imperceptibly, and she knew the news he brought from Ethan's prison was not encouraging. "Gentlemen," Gregory began, his voice echoing through the hall, "we are gathered to resolve a situation that threatens Hymir's stability. My daughter has presented serious allegations based on a document she claims to be the testament of my late father. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce the McAdam family, who traveled overnight to be present." The McAdam patriarch stepped forward, his voice clear and firm when he spoke. "I am Robert McAdam, great-grandson of Margaret McAdam, who was a cousin of Lord Raymond Rowland. We have kept in our family, for 3 generations, copies of the testament Lady Amanda refers to. We came not to claim power, but to ensure that the wishes of an honourable man are respected." Hargrove rose abruptly, his face red with indignation. "This is ridiculous. We are allowing peasants to question the authority of a noble house based on old papers that could have been forged by any competent scribe." "Mind your words, Lord Hargrove," Robert MacAdam replied calmly. "We are a humble family, but our lineage is as old as the Rowlands, and our documents have been preserved with the same care as any family treasure." Amanda felt her heart quicken. It was working. The MacAdams were standing firm, the council was paying attention, and even if some seemed skeptical, none were dismissing the claims immediately. It was then that Hargrove played his first card. "Very well," he said, walking to the centre of the hall. "If we are going to talk about documents and legitimacy, then let us also talk about proper behaviour. Lord Gregory, I present formal accusations against Lady Amanda Rowland for improper conduct with a subordinate." The silence that followed was absolute. Amanda felt the blood drain from her face, but she forced herself to remain erect. She knew this moment would come, she had prepared for it, but that did not make the experience any less terrifying. "What evidence do you present for this accusation?" asked one of the older councillors, Sir Marcus Thornfield. Hargrove smiled, and it was a cruel smile. "The vehement defence she made of Sir Ethan Parker yesterday, the way she placed herself between him and justice. And this," he pulled a small piece of parchment from his robes, "an intercepted letter, written in Lady Amanda's own hand, intended for the prisoner." Amanda felt the world spin around her. She had been careful, extremely careful. The only thing she had sent Ethan was the handkerchief through Friar Edmund, and the friar would never betray her. How could Hargrove have— "May I see this supposed letter?" Friar Edmund stepped forward, holding out his hand. Hargrove hesitated for just a second, but it was long enough for Amanda to realize the truth. "It is not necessary. The content is improper to be read in public. If it is evidence of misconduct, it must be examined by competent authorities," the friar insisted. "As spiritual advisor of this house, I have the right to verify any document that affects the moral reputation of its members. The letter is private." "Private letters are not evidence in court, Lord Hargrove," Robert MacAdam observed. "If you accuse a lady of improper conduct, you must present adequate proof, not insinuations based on documents you refuse to show." Amanda saw the anger growing on Hargrove's face and knew he had overestimated his position. He had expected the mere suggestion of impropriety to be enough to discredit her claims about the testament. He had not counted on the presence of the MacAdams or the council's insistence on following proper procedures. "Very well," Hargrove growled, clearly improvising. "If you want evidence, I present this. I personally witnessed the inappropriate intimacy between Lady Amanda and the prisoner. I saw glances exchanged. I saw the way she referred to him. I saw—" "You saw suggestions," Amanda interrupted, finally finding her voice. "You saw a lady defending an honourable knight against injustice. You saw someone who values character above social position. If that is a crime in your eyes, then perhaps the problem is not with me, but with your own inability to recognize honour when you see it." "How dare you?" Hargrove took a step toward her, and immediately two of his men moved to flank him. "I will not be insulted by a woman who has forgotten her place." It was then that Gregory stood up, and his voice echoed with real authority for the first time in days. "Enough, Lord Hargrove, your men are not welcome in this hall armed. Either you dismiss them, or I will order my guards to do so." "Your guards?" Hargrove laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "Lord Gregory, I believe you do not fully understand your situation. I have significant investments in Hymir, contracts that can be cancelled, alliances that can be broken. Without my support, your position will become precarious." The threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. Amanda saw several council members exchange worried glances. Hargrove was not just trying to force the marriage, he was attempting an economic coup. It was Robert MacAdam who broke the silence. "Lord Hargrove, your threats only prove why Lord Raymond found it necessary to create safeguards against the abuse of power. A man who tries to buy authority with economic blackmail is exactly the type of person the testament was designed to protect against. And who are you to speak of authority, peasant? I am a free citizen of Hymir, descended from a family that has served this land for generations, and unlike some present, I do not confuse wealth with moral worth." Hargrove turned to Gregory, his fists clenched. "This ends here, Lord Gregory. Either Lady Amanda marries me today as agreed, or I withdraw all my investments from Hymir and ensure other merchants do the same. I will watch this region wither until they beg for my return." Amanda took a deep breath. It was the moment she had waited for, the moment Hargrove revealed his true nature before everyone. "And if I refuse?" she asked clearly. Hargrove smiled, and it was a smile that made Amanda's blood run cold. "Then I fear Sir Ethan Parker may suffer an accident in his cell. Prisons are dangerous places, especially for men accused of treason." The hall erupted in murmurs of shock and indignation. Even the council members who had been sympathetic to Hargrove seemed horrified by the open threat. But Amanda also saw something else. She saw that Gregory was as pale as she was. "You heard," she said, addressing the entire hall. "Are you all heard? He threatens to kill an innocent prisoner if I do not accept his demands. Is this what you want for Hymir? Is this the kind of man who deserves influence over our future?" And it was then that the biggest surprise of all happened. Gregory rose slowly, and when he spoke, his voice carried a genuine authority Amanda had not heard in years. "Matthew Hargrove," he said, "you have just threatened a prisoner under my custody, attempted to blackmail a feudal lord, and insulted a noble invited family. Withdraw from my land immediately, or it will be you who needs to fear for your safety." Hargrove stared at him in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." "I am entirely serious, and if anything happens to Sir Ethan Parker, I will hold you personally responsible." Amanda looked at her father with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Perhaps there was still something of the honorable man he had once been, hidden beneath years of paranoia and thirst for power. Hargrove looked around the hall, saw that he had completely lost the support he expected, and his expression turned into something dangerous. "This does not end here," he murmured. "You do not know who you are trifling with." With that, he turned and left, his men following him. But Amanda knew his parting words were not empty. Hargrove was the kind of man who would rather destroy something than lose it. The war was far from over. In fact, perhaps it was just beginning. The silence that followed Hargrove's departure was dense and fraught with possibilities. Amanda could feel the weight of the council's gaze upon her, some curious, others worried, all waiting to see how she would respond to this crucial moment. Her father remained standing beside the throne, and she saw in his eyes an expression she did not fully recognize, something between reluctant pride and genuine fear. Friar Edmund stepped forward, carrying the leather pouch that contained the historical documents. "With the permission of Lord Gregory and the council, I would like to proceed with the formal examination of the testament presented by Lady Amanda." "Proceed," Gregory nodded, his voice lower than before. Amanda realized that expelling Hargrove had cost him more energy than he had publicly displayed. The merchant's economic threats were not empty, and both knew it. Robert McAdam approached, carrying a carefully preserved parchment. "This is the document our family has guarded for 3 generations. As you can see, the wax seal is still intact, and the handwriting is identical to the other documents of Lord Raymond we have in our archives," Friar Edmund confirmed, comparing the parchments side by side. "The wording is also consistent with the legal style of the time. This is, without a doubt, an authentic document." Amanda felt a wave of relief, but she knew the document's authenticity was only the first hurdle. Now came the hardest part, convincing the council that implementing it was the right thing to do. "If I may," she said, addressing the hall, "I would like to explain why I believe this testament is not only valid, but necessary." One of the older councillors, Sir Marcus Thornfield, nodded for her to continue. Amanda had waited for this moment for so long that she could hardly believe it had finally arrived. "Lord Raymond wrote this document because he saw signs that the power in Hymir could become despotic. He loved this land and its people, but he knew that love alone is not enough to prevent injustice." Amanda walked slowly through the hall, making eye contact with each council member. "Yesterday you saw an honourable knight publicly humiliated for defending the vulnerable. You saw a lady promised to a man who sees her as property. And you just heard open threats of violence against a defenseless prisoner. These are exactly the situations my grandfather tried to prevent." "Lady Amanda," another councillor intervened, "we understand your concerns, but implementing this testament would mean dividing Lord Gregory's authority. How can we be sure that this will result in better governance and not chaos?" The question was fair, and Amanda was prepared for it. "Because the division of power does not weaken legitimate authority, it strengthens it. When power is absolute, it becomes easy to abuse it. When it is divided among honourable people who must account to one another, it becomes harder to corrupt." Robert McAdam nodded in agreement. "Our family does not seek power for its own sake. We seek only to ensure that Lord Raymond's ideals are honoured. If the testament is implemented, We will work side by side with the House of Rowland for the benefit of everyone in Hymir. And what about the imprisoned knight? Asked Sir Marcus. His actions yesterday, though perhaps well-intentioned, constitute grave insubordination. Amanda took a deep breath. It was the question she feared most, but also the one she had prepared for most carefully. Sir Ethan Parker did exactly what any knight of honor should do. He protected a lady who was being assaulted. If that is a crime, then our understanding of chivalry is fundamentally corrupted. But he attacked a noble, another council member observed. Regardless of the provocation, that cannot be tolerated. It was Gregory who answered, surprising everyone. Matthew Hargrove was not attacked. His own words here today confirmed that Sir Ethan merely forced him to release my daughter when she was being assaulted. In retrospect, he paused, and Amanda saw something like regret in his eyes. I believe the knight acted correctly. The murmur that ran through the hall was one of genuine surprise. No one expected Gregory to defend Ethan, especially after the public humiliation of the day before. Amanda felt a spark of hope. Perhaps her father could be redeemed after all. Friar Edmund stepped forward once more. If I may suggest, there are precedents for situations like this. The Wessex Code of Laws establishes that a knight has not only the right, but the obligation to protect any noble lady from physical assault, regardless of the aggressor's social position. Are you suggesting Sir Ethan be acquitted? Asked Sir Marcus. I am suggesting that the accusations against him be re-evaluated in light of evidence that was not obvious yesterday. And I am also suggesting, he looked directly at Amanda, that Lady Amanda demonstrated exceptional courage in taking a difficult stand on behalf of justice. Amanda felt tears sting her eyes, but she held them back. It was not time for emotion. It was time for resolve. Gentlemen of the council, I am not asking you to implement my grandfather's testament merely because it is my right. I am asking you to do so because it is the right thing. Hymir deserves leadership that places the good of the people above personal convenience. It deserves knights who can defend the vulnerable without fear of retribution, and it deserves for all of us to be accountable to something greater than our own ambitions. The silence that followed was contemplative. Amanda could see the councillors weighing her words, considering the implications, trying to calculate the consequences of their decisions. It was terrifying to know that Hymir's future, Ethan's fate, and her own destiny depended on the next words to be spoken. Finally, Sir Marcus stood up. Lady Amanda, the courage you have demonstrated is admirable, and your concerns about justice are valid. However, implementing this testament is a decision of extraordinary magnitude. It cannot be taken lightly. Amanda's heart sank. She could hear the rejection in his words, wrapped in diplomacy, but unmistakable. Therefore, Sir Marcus continued, I propose that the council retire for private deliberations. We will examine all documents, consider all evidence, and return with a formal decision tomorrow at dawn. Amanda nodded, trying to mask her disappointment. One more day of waiting. One more day for Hargrove to plan his next move. One more day for Ethan to remain in danger. But she knew that pushing for an immediate decision could be counterproductive. I accept the council's wisdom, she said. I only ask that, during your deliberations, you remember that every hour that passes is an hour in which injustices can occur, in which good people can suffer, in which Hymir's future hangs in a delicate balance. As the council began to disperse, Gregory approached her. For a moment, father and daughter stared at each other in silence, the weight of the past 2 days seeming to cling to the air between them. Amanda, he said finally, you have grown into a woman I do not recognize. Stronger than I could have imagined, braver than I myself have been. Father, let me finish. He raised a hand. I do not know if the council will implement the testament. I do not know if Sir Ethan will be acquitted. I do not know if we will recover from Hargrove's threats. But I know one thing. You did what you believed was right, regardless of the personal consequences. That is something I can be proud of. Amanda felt the tears she had held back finally escape. Do you truly believe that? I do. And I also believe that regardless of what happens tomorrow, you have changed something important here. You have changed the way people think about authority, about responsibility, about what it means to truly lead. He hesitated. You have changed the way I think about these things. When Gregory walked away, Amanda remained alone in the nearly empty hall, with only Robert McAdam and his family. The patriarch approached, his expression gentle but serious. Lady Amanda, he said, regardless of what the council decides tomorrow, know that your courage today honored Lord Raymond's memory. He would be proud. And if the council decides against us? Robert smiled, and it was a sad but determined smile. Then we will continue fighting. Some battles are too big to be won in a single day, but that does not mean we should stop fighting. Amanda nodded, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and renewed energy. One day, in less than a day, she would know if all her courage, all her planning, all her risk had been worth it. She would know if Ethan would be safe, if Hymir would have a chance to be fairer, if she herself would have a future that did not involve being Matthew Hargrove's property. Until then, all she could do was wait, pray, and have faith that the truth still held power in this world, even when facing gold, threats, and centuries of tradition. The night would be long, but the morning would bring answers, for better or for worse. Night fell over Hymir with a stillness that contrasted sharply with the tension still vibrating through the castle stones. Amanda remained in her room, unable to sleep, her thoughts alternating between hope and terror as she imagined Ethan in the cells below, probably as sleepless as she was, and the council gathered somewhere, deciding the fate of them all. Around midnight, soft knocking on her door made her jump. When she opened it, she found one of the older maids, Margaret, who had served her family since before she was born. The woman's expression was tense, her eyes darting nervously down the corridors. "Lady Amanda," she whispered, "you need to come with me, quickly and quietly." "What happened?" "Hargrove's men have been seen near the castle. Friar Edmund asks you to come to the archive immediately. There is something you need to see before dawn." Amanda pulled a cloak over her nightgown and followed Margaret through dimly lit corridors, her bare feet making only the slightest whisper against the cold stones. The castle looked different at night, older, more full of shadows that could hide anything. The archive was in a side tower, a place she rarely visited but knew contained the family's most important records. When they reached the door, Margaret knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. A code. Friar Edmund opened the door, his expression relieved to see them. "Come in quickly, we have little time." The interior of the archive was lit by several candles, creating a golden circle of light amidst the shelves filled with ancient parchments. Sitting at a table in the center of the room was Robert McAdam, but he was not alone. A younger man, whom Amanda did not recognize, was beside him, dressed in travel clothes covered in mud. "Lady Amanda," Robert stood up, "I present my nephew Thomas McAdam. He rode all night bringing news that changes everything." Thomas bowed respectfully, but when he raised his eyes, Amanda saw in them an urgency that made her stomach clench with anxiety. "Lady Amanda, I have information about Matthew Hargrove that the council needs to know, information that explains why he is so desperate to marry you and control Hymir." "What information?" Thomas pulled a packet of documents from inside his tunic. "Hargrove is not just an ambitious merchant. He is deeply in debt to financiers in London, debts that could completely ruin him if he does not secure new resources quickly." Amanda sat down heavily in a chair. "New resources like the dowry from a marriage to a noble heiress?" "Exactly. But there is more. Hargrove is involved in questionable commercial practices, tax evasion, using illegal routes, bribing port officials." Thomas spread the documents on the table. "If this information reaches the right authorities, he will not only lose his wealth, but could face criminal charges." Friar Edmund examined the documents, his expression growing darker with each parchment he read. "This explains his desperation. He needs the marriage not only to gain influence, but to survive financially. And it explains why he was willing to make such open threats today," Amanda added. "A desperate man is capable of anything." Robert nodded gravely. "My nephew discovered this information through commercial contacts in London. Hargrove has made many enemies, and some of them were willing to talk." Amanda looked at the documents, feeling a mixture of triumph and fear. The evidence was compelling, but it was also dangerous. Hargrove would not hesitate to use violence to prevent this information from reaching the council. "How can we ensure the council sees this?" she asked. It was then that they heard it. Footsteps in the corridor, many footsteps, moving with the forced quietness of men trying not to be detected. Friar Edmund quickly extinguished several candles, leaving only one burning, and gestured for everyone to remain silent. Amanda held her breath as voices became audible through the wooden door. "I'm sure I saw light coming from this direction," a rough voice whispered. She did not recognize the speaker, but the accent was different from the local one of Hargrove's men. "Check all the doors," another voice ordered. "If she's not in her room, she must be somewhere in this section of the castle." Amanda felt her blood run cold. They were specifically looking for her. Hargrove had decided he could not wait for the council's decision. He was trying to force the situation in a much more direct and dangerous way. Margaret grabbed her arm, whispering almost soundlessly, "There is a secret passage behind the main bookshelf. It leads to the gardens." But before they could move, the doorknob began to turn. Friar Edmund moved quickly, placing himself between the door and the others, while Robert hid the documents inside his clothes. The door burst inward when someone kicked it hard, and in the opening, silhouetted by the faint light of the corridor, stood Ethan Parker. He was no longer wearing the simple clothes of a prisoner. Somehow he had recovered his armor and his sword, and there was a fire in his eyes that Amanda had never seen before. Behind him she could see other loyal knights of Hymir. "Lady Amanda," Ethan said, his voice charged with authority and contained fury, "are these men disturbing you?" The relief Amanda felt was so intense it almost made her faint, but with the relief also came renewed terror. Ethan was free, but that meant the battle was just beginning. "Sir Ethan," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "it is good to see you. Yes, these knights were just explaining how they intended to take me against my will." Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving Hargrove's soldiers. "I see, and I suppose they have legal documents authorizing such an action." The soldiers' leader tried to bluff. "We have authority from Matthew Hargrove, the lady's legal fiancé." "Interesting," Ethan replied, taking a step inside the room. "Because I have here an order signed by Lord Gregory Rowland, declaring that any attempt to remove Lady Amanda from the castle without his explicit consent will be considered kidnapping and treated accordingly." Amanda saw uncertainty pass across the faces of Hargrove's soldiers. They had expected to find a defenseless lady, and perhaps an elderly friar. They did not expect to face armed Hymir knights with legal authorization. But the leader was a desperate man, serving another desperate man. He raised his sword. "Authorization from a lord whose legitimacy is being questioned is worthless. We are taking the lady with us." It was Ethan who smiled this time, and it was an expression that promised violence. "Then you will have to go through me first." What followed happened so quickly that Amanda could barely keep up. Blades clashed, men shouted, and suddenly the quiet room turned into a war zone. But even as she watched Ethan fight with skill and ferocity that confirmed why he was so respected as a knight, Amanda knew this was only the first skirmish in a war that was far from over. Hargrove had shown he was willing to use force, poison, and any other means necessary to get what he wanted, and if he was that desperate, he would not stop until he was completely defeated. The battle for Hymir's future had truly begun. Dawn arrived tinged with red over Hymir, as if the sky itself anticipated the bloodshed that had marked the night. Amanda stood in the highest tower of the castle, watching the last of Hargrove's soldiers being escorted out of the main gates. The battle in the archive had been quick but decisive, and when other loyal knights arrived to support Ethan, the invaders found themselves at a clear disadvantage. But the tactical victory of the night before was only a small part of a much larger fight. Hargrove had fled during the chaos, but not before leaving a clear message. He was declaring open war against the House of Rowland. His economic threats were now accompanied by promises of real violence. Ethan climbed the tower stairs, his steps echoing against the stone. When he reached the top, Amanda turned to face him, and for a moment they simply looked at each other in silence. It was the first time they had truly been alone since everything had begun, and the weight of what they had been through together hung in the air between them. "How did you get out of prison?" Amanda finally asked. Ethan smiled, an expression that mixed relief and exhaustion. "Your father personally released me a few hours ago. He said a knight who risked his life to protect his daughter deserved to be free to defend her properly." "He said that?" "Among other things. I believe the events of the last few days have made him reflect on many decisions." Ethan approached, and Amanda could see the worry in his eyes. "Amanda, are you all right? When I heard Hargrove's men were in the castle, looking for you." "I am fine," she reassured him, lightly touching his arm. The contact was brief, but enough to send waves of warmth through both of them. "Thanks to you and the other knights." Ethan covered her hand with his, and this time neither of them pulled away. "Amanda, there is something I need to tell you before anything else happens." She nodded, her heart racing. "Yesterday, when you stood up in the hall, when you defied your father and Hargrove, when you risked everything to defend what was right, I knew I was in love with you. Not just attracted, not just concerned, but completely, irrevocably in love." The words came out in a rush, as if he was afraid his courage would abandon him if he hesitated. Amanda felt tears sting her eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sadness. "Ethan," she whispered, "I felt the same way. When you placed yourself between me and danger, When you chose to protect me, knowing it could cost your life, I knew you were not just an honorable knight, but the man I loved." They moved toward each other simultaneously, and when their lips met, it was as if all the fear, all the tension, all the uncertainty of the past few days dissolved into something pure and true. The kiss was soft but intense, charged with promises and possibilities. When they separated, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I have no extensive lands to offer, nor riches to impress merchants. I have only my sword, my honor, and a heart that is completely yours." "It is everything I could ever want," Amanda replied. "Land and gold do not make a man worthy. Character does. And you, Ethan Parker, have more character in your little finger than Hargrove has in his entire body." The intimate moment was interrupted by footsteps on the stairs. Gregory appeared, followed by Friar Edmund and Robert McAdam. The Lord's expression was solemn, but not hostile. "Amanda," he said, "the council is recovering from whatever Hargrove put in their wine. They will be ready to meet again in an hour, but there are developments you need to know." "What kind of developments?" Ethan asked, his hand still holding Amanda's. It was Robert McAdam who replied. "Hargrove did not flee alone. He took several important documents from Hymere's commercial archives with him, documents he can use to cause serious economic damage if he manages to reach London. Furthermore," Gregory added, "we have received messages from other noble houses in the region. Hargrove is spreading stories about instability in Hymere, trying to undermine our credibility before the council can make an official decision on the testament." Amanda felt her stomach clench. "So even if we win the legal battle, we could lose the economic war." "Unless," Friar Edmund said, producing the documents Thomas McAdam had brought the night before, "we use the information we have about Hargrove's illegal activities. If we can get this evidence to the authorities in London before he can consolidate his position, it would be necessary to send someone immediately," Ethan observed. "Someone who can travel quickly and is trustworthy enough to handle such sensitive documents." Gregory looked at Ethan for a long moment. "Sir Ethan, would you be willing to accept such a mission? I know asking you to leave Hymere at this moment is—" "I accept," Ethan interrupted without hesitation. "If it will help protect Amanda and Hymere, I accept." Amanda felt a pang of fear. The idea of Ethan leaving now, when they had finally found each other, was almost unbearable, but she also knew it was the right thing to do. "You will not go alone," she said. "Thomas McAdam can accompany you. He knows the contacts in London and can help ensure the evidence reaches the right people." Robert nodded in approval. "My nephew would be honored to accompany Sir Ethan." "Then it is decided," Gregory declared. "In the meantime, the council will proceed with the examination of the testament. With or without Hargrove's maneuvers, the question of the division of authority in Hymere will be resolved." Friar Edmund stepped forward. "Lord Gregory, if I may suggest, this would be an appropriate moment to make another important announcement." "What announcement?" The friar looked meaningfully at Amanda and Ethan, their hands still clasped. "Your daughter's engagement was officially broken when Hargrove was expelled from the castle. Perhaps it is time to consider a union that is based on mutual love and respect, rather than political convenience." Gregory followed the friar's gaze and saw their joined hands, saw the way they looked at each other, saw the happiness radiating from both of them despite all the difficulties they faced. "Amanda," he said finally, "do you truly love this man?" "With all my heart, Father." "And you, Sir Ethan, do you love my daughter enough to protect her, honor her, and place her happiness above any personal ambition?" "With all my soul, my lord." Gregory was silent for a long moment, contemplating the valley stretching out below the tower. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a resolution Amanda had not heard in years. "Then, when you return from London, with evidence that will destroy Matthew Hargrove once and for all, we will celebrate not only the implementation of my father's testament, but also the marriage of my daughter to a man who has proven himself worthy of her." Amanda felt tears of joy stream down her face. Ethan pulled her into his arms, and this time she did not worry about protocol or who might be watching. "There is one condition," Gregory continued, but he was smiling now. "The wedding will happen here, in Hymere, with all the pomp and circumstance due to the union of two people who fought so hard to be together, and it will be a celebration not only of love, but of the victory of justice over tyranny." As the sun finally broke through the clouds and bathed the tower in golden light, Amanda knew that, regardless of the challenges they still faced, they had won the most important battle, the battle to choose their own destiny based on love, honor, and truth. 2 hours later, Ethan departed for London, carrying with him not only the documents that would destroy Matthew Hargrove, but also a handkerchief embroidered by Amanda and a promise that she would be waiting for his return. The council met that afternoon and, after deliberation, officially implemented Lord Raymond's testament, dividing authority over Highmere between the House of Rowland and the MacAdam family. It was a historic decision that would change the governance of the region forever. And 3 weeks later, when Ethan returned from London with news that Hargrove had been arrested for fraud and tax evasion, Amanda waited for him at the main gate, wearing the wedding dress her mother had worn years before. The wedding was celebrated in the same hall where everything had begun, but now the stones echoed with laughter and joy instead of tension and fear. And when Ethan took Amanda as his wife, he knew he was receiving not only the woman he loved, but a partner who would never hesitate to fight for what was right no matter the cost. Together, they had transformed Highmere. Together, they would build a future based on justice, love, and the understanding that true power comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves.